text Gabriele was writing, or reading, sorry, was very rich. So what I try to do is react to 3 points, namely manufacturing hopelessness, one thing that was said in this text, revolution in reverse, also mentioned in this text, and then finally the artist as figure of resistance, which in fact in a sense you could say is the main theme of the text. I will not read my text because if you have to listen for an hour and 20 minutes for 4 speakers who will read their text, I think that will not work. So I sort of improvise. My reaction, of course, also for sake of the argument, to this reasoning largely based on David Graeber, is that manufacturing hopelessness for me is not the main problem. It is the capture of our imagination. In fact, you could say, also again for the sake of the argument, that we are not hopeless enough. That's in fact what I feel. If we would be really hopeless, we would maybe do something about, for instance, global warming. You could also say that our imagination, we are too much captured in our imagination. People think of the genre fantasy and all the films that come with it, and my kids love it. Kids, let's say daughters 22 to 18, so not so young. So that in fact you could say many people spend their lives in a world of fantasy, be it soap opera, be it a series, be it film, be it novels, be it fantasy, etc., be it theme parks. So I'm not so sure if it lacks, it's an imagination that it's captured. The word capture, I think, is quite interesting. You could, of course, refer to Deleuze and Guattari for those who like references, but I think for me it's not this manufacturing of hopelessness that is the problem. In a sense, for me, one of the real disasters which I now, it's a bit hot maybe, that I'm working on a lexicon, a sort of vocabulary or dictionary of what I call contaminated words. All this neoliberal newspeak that enters our daily speech, also in sort of NGO circles and activist circles, win-win situation, expertise, competence, business plan, core business content, product placement, unique selling point, output, etc., etc. I think we should ban these words, because these words for me are a sort of symptom that neoliberalism and management ideology and marketing as a sort of framing the world has entered our brains, has entered our language, has entered the cells of our being. And I think we should fight this. So in a sense, again, for maybe also for the sake of discussion, I think we are not hopeless. We are buying into the system. We are in the competition. We are selling ourselves. We all, in fact, deep down conceive ourselves as an enterprise. Artists are very well and very good, and in fact almost exemplary in selling themselves. I don't want to be too severe here, but I think it is true. You could say the artist is also a model of the ultimate entrepreneurial self. So, and I think this entrepreneurial self is in the way of any real alternative. So in fact, it is because we are taken in this rat race, and I think of academics. Academia is not a good ambiente, it's not a good environment anymore, because there is a sort of production ethos and the same words of output and sort of market conformity and entrepreneurship, and all these things have percolated into academia, quality control, etc. And the quantification of evaluations, that you have to have your A1 publication, etc., etc. So you get into a closed sphere instead of being a public intellectual. Academics become entrepreneurial selves of their own career. So I think we have to break down, and it is this that leads to Tina, in fact, to this, there is no alternative. And there are alternatives, which brings me to my second point. revolutions in reverse. Maybe if we could maybe escape this. I'm very glad with this picture. It's an artwork, this one. I'll explain you in a minute. Whatever you call them, concrete utopias, revolutions in reverse, in the 10th term of David Graeber, or small revolutions. Our local anthropologist Rick Bengston uses this word, small revolutions. He has made a book on it. They exist. The name is not so important. You could call them also spaces of hope, as David Harvey does. And I do believe, and this is my example, that the urban commons, as you could call them, it's also an expression David Harvey uses in his book Rebel Cities, are places of hope. And I use as a very concrete example Park Farm, but you could also refer to the Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée, to Campus and Camps, to many activist practices. But to be very concrete, I will refer to Park Farm. Here is Park Farm. So if I wrote a text for those who master Dutch in the audience, Park Farm as complete utopia. People's Gardens 2.0. Here you have a sort of vision. It is a community garden here in Brussels at the site of Tour and Taxi. It was a festival, so it is not against the state, because that's another thing I want to discuss, this sort of anti-state rhetorics. It's a bit facile in my opinion. It's all very nice to be anarchistic, but without the state, I think we might be in deep trouble, because you lose the monopoly of violence. And losing the monopoly of violence is maybe a dream for Rousseauist people, but it's a nightmare once the mafia takes the streets. And it does take the street. I mean, humans are violent. As I will give you an example later. But first, this initiative, so it is not only bottom-up, it is also bottom-up. So there's many things that I cannot, of course, give you an idea of everything. But there is a community garden, there is an oven to make bread, there is sort of a little fat zoo or for chicken and sheep. There was a dry toilet, very important, now that's gone. Dry toilet which makes a sort of circle from human waste comes humus and compost. You can see here on the picture this table that was made by artists for the community, with on the maybe you can make it bigger, on the table you have edible green, like I had minty today, in fact, because today there was it's one of the reasons to mention them, there was a sort of winter feast. I had minty made from the table, if you want. And here, then you have a new community garden. Here, outside the image, let's say to the right, there was an old community garden. Here lives, in fact, a homeless person. Here is the oven, in fact, a homeless person. And on the third bridge, here, in fact, you still see the dry toilet. The third bridge, because it's a sort of old train valley, if you want, with three bridges. In fact, the most beautiful bridge is the point of vantage where the photo is taken from. But on the third bridge, which you can see nearly here, there is another guy living there. So the homeless are all integrated, and also, of course, the Moroccan people. Abdel and his jeep is one of the guys. But then there's also Mo with his tea house, etc., etc. So it is a little, but not so little. It's quite a park. It will become a linear park from the canal in Brussels to Laken Center, so this People's Park will be sort of kernel of this linear park. In fact, we hope. So it is quite something. And what I find fascinating is that it has here a little bit more vision. Here I sit on the terrace and you see Cauter, which is the chicken house, let's say. And you see also Brussels North and the beautiful industrial bridge. So it has poetry, but it has also this quite interesting mixture of artists, of locals, volunteers, Moroccans, white eco-bobos as they are called. We are of course the eco-bobos. So it has potential, and in fact, instead of just being a festival, it was prolonged for at least 1 year, but I think it has a chance to really survive. You see the table and the sort of activities that go on, and quite a beautiful vision of Brussels North Quarter and the bridge. So I think these initiatives where artists, architects, locals, volunteers, but also just the different cultures come together in a sort of ecological project, which at the same time is in fact a social mixing machine, because in the cities we will need them badly, because humans don't mix, they stay in their cultural, class, ethnic, religious, etc. context, and in that sort of places you mix in a very natural way. I think we will need this, and you could say it's all very naive, but it is, I think, crucial, because, for instance, as you look at the practice of Doina Petrescu with the AAA, the Atelier d'Architecture Autogérée, you can see that, in fact, they try to sort of make this, which is very similar to this. I think, in fact, this is in fact inspired by the AAA. It becomes rhizomatic, it can become a network, it can spread, it can really be a model, a paradigm of how to produce in the city, make short ecological circuits, both in production and in waste treatment, as I briefly evoked. So for me, this is really one of these examples of revolutions in reverse, very concrete utopias. Of course, there is difficulties which you can discuss. Maybe because I'm always afraid of being too long. We can discuss the weaknesses of the common, the question of scale, the political order. For instance, yes, maybe this I have to say, the policing against the anti-state rhetoric. The government, it's not the government, it's Bruxelles Environnement, who organized this festival, if you want. It was a second version of this festival. The first one was just a sort of artistic festival. This one is much more localized and permanent. So they guard the park. There are sort of guards who work with the youth, because there's also a playground, etc., etc. But there was a rape in the dry toilet, even if it was called the Temple of Holy Shit, and afterwards, because it was not acceptable to the neighborhood, l'usine de Trésor Noir, and it was you could glide outside the toilet. So it was one of the most, in my opinion, impressive features. It was also an artistic collective doing it, of activist artist collective called Collective Disaster. So I must say I sympathized with these guys and their sense of humor, but also their sense of reality, because they were steering in this shit. So I saw them do it for hours. So it is also very real. As Doina Petrescu also said, that you have to make these distances, that in the morning you are steering this compost in the making, and at night you're giving lectures. I think this is the distances we, as artists, intellectuals, activists, have to cover. And the rape gives you an idea that it will not be paradise. So there will be necessary for a political order. And if you have to self-organize political order, you get vigilantes, and that's also a dangerous logic. So we have to think twice before we go into too cheap rhetorics of self-organization without any state and with any policing and meaning monopoly of violence. This is of course a very political theme, but it's good to erase a bit naivety of my picture by giving it some dirt, if you want, some shit, because shit will continue to happen. That's unfortunate, but it will. We are not angels, which is also good, because if we would be angels, we would be sexless. But anyhow, Um, so, the artist, not as angel, but as figure of resistance. Central question. My response would be very blunt. Sorry, I'm very sort of struggling for weeks now with some bronchitis. Is no. The artist is not by essence, but also for the sake of the argument, of course, I know this scores always very well. All the artists in the audience are already very angry now. No, I was almost killed in Graz for my thesis on art and activism. But not by essence, let's say. Why is in fact very obvious. The artist is heterotopian and not utopian. He's in the world of play, and this I say with the biggest respect. I think play is an underestimated category, so not everything is action in the Arendtian sense of acting in the public sphere. And I think that's one of the weaknesses of her book on the human condition, that she doesn't see the importance, the sort of fundamental importance of ritual and playful behavior and imaging and, in short, art, religion and sports. The culture. For her there is the private, the economy and the political, and we all tend to think a bit in this dichotomy and forget that play is irreducible, so that there's nothing wrong with playing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just, for instance, another aspect, let's not dwell on this too long, because I want to be so short as humanly possible, so I'm almost there. The thing is that political action, and I know I'm quite a bit of an activist myself, which is of course another sort of discussion in itself, but anyhow, political action should be clear, unambiguous, straightforward, moral, of course, ethical at least, etc. Art, think of a novel, is complex, ambiguous, maybe not immoral, but amoral, not moralistic at all. Bad novels that are moralistic. Ambiguity is the fundamental aspect of the novel, and I do follow Kundera in this. This is almost the definition of the novel. It is the art of ambiguity. Novels with, on the one hand, good characters, and on the other hand, bad characters. When good characters that are only good, and characters that are bad and only bad is for fairy tales, but it is not for novels. Yeah, it's bad art, it's bad films also. Think of some films of Ken Loach. I love the guy for his political commitment, but he sometimes follows open-eyed in the trap of bad art. For instance, Bread and Roses, the Mexican women fighting for their rights are really darlings, and those who exploit them, because they're illegal, are really devils, and you can go a list. So art and politics are really, in fact, there is a sort of a difficult combo that we often tend to forget. So I'm very old-fashioned, if you want. I think art should be strong in defending its famous Adornian functionlessness. The famous words of Adorno, the function of art is its functionlessness. I think in these times that everything has to be functional, more than even Adorno could dream in his darkest dreams, I think we should insist in the functionlessness of art. But, of course, I'm open. I just gave you the example. This is an artwork. This is called the Electric Rainbow. And to get back to my beginning, or the opening image of my little speech. I forgot the name of the artist, I'm sorry. So I will make up by mentioning him in another article. It's called the Electric Rainbow Farm Fair. It's in a sense quite subtle. It's just colorful lights that suggest somewhat melancholy of a farm fair, a sort of local village-like little discotheque at some. So in winter, when I took this picture, it's almost melancholic. But in summer, of course, you have a concert, and it is, of course, it turns into a party space under the bridge. So it's an art that is not pretentious, it's almost invisible in its intervention, like the table, but it is an art that really helps. It's like the cherry on the cake of the urban commons. So I do think that the artist can go beyond Adorno and has the right to do so and become a curator like Letizia and Gabriele of an event that can do many things. And I do think that the artist, as a member of a multicultural team, is one of these new functions that we have to consider, which I find intriguing. And I do think that, of course, we have to leave open the autonomy of art also. And I do think that, in fact, because this was mainly steered, as you can see, in fact, by architects who curated this whole park farm thing together, of course, with the inhabitants and the volunteers, that an expanded idea of the architect and architecture can maybe be one of the models of this, this new acts of urban activism. Calling it resistance is maybe too much.